I'm Senator James Lankford. I want to get a chance to talk to you a little bit about the Export-Import Bank that's actually managed by the federal government. You'll hear it called the EXIM Bank. There's been a lot of conversation about it of late because as of June the 30th, the EXIM Bank has actually expired its authorization. That means it's still continuing the loans it has in its portfolio. It's just not adding any new loans. The EXIM Bank was created to help promote trade. It's one of 20 different entities in the federal government that promotes trade internationally. It's a good thing for us to actually do international trade. We want American businesses to compete not only in America but around the world, and it takes some connection with the government to help facilitate that trade. So the EXIM Bank in its purpose is not necessarily bad, but what it's become has become a problem. There are four main things that it does. Two of them really dominate the EXIM Bank. One is the loans, just the direct loans that the EXIM Bank does. Subsidizing taxpayer-backed loans to companies to be able to do overseas business. The second one is taxpayer-backed loan guarantees. That is, someone would actually facilitate the loan, but if that loan defaults either for political instability overseas or for just the company overseas just went out of business, taxpayers then cover the bill for that. Those are the two main things that the EXIM Bank does. There's several different proposals on EXIM right now and a lot of different issues that are hanging out there. I've proposed multiple different reforms, and there's quite a few of us that have talked about it. Let me just bring up a couple of those reforms that I think need to happen with EXIM before we do anything dealing with EXIM in the days ahead. One of them is this small business conversation about EXIM. EXIM likes to talk a lot about how many small businesses actually operate through EXIM. But the problem is the definition. When you ask EXIM what is a small business, they'll tell you it's a company with 1,500 employees or less. Well, most Americans would not consider a business with 1,500 employees as a small business. So EXIM kind of fudges the numbers a little bit there to say we do a lot of small businesses, but you have to ask what the definition is. So that definition needs to go to an actual definition for small business and then to help promote small businesses. The majority of loans that are done for international trade, 98%, in fact, from the United States, is done without using the EXIM Bank, and the vast majority of small businesses don't use EXIM on that, though some do and choose to be able to operate with that. Second thing is, right now we're subsidizing loans to foreign companies, that those companies are also getting subsidies from their government, and then they're creating a product and then competing against American businesses. It's not right for American taxpayer dollars to subsidize companies that actually compete against other American companies. We've got to fix that. We also have subsidies going to foreign-owned and state-owned banks overseas. Some of those we actually have a bar on right now. For instance, some of the largest Russian banks in the past were subsidized by EXIM loans. There's also an issue about loan guarantees and how we handle that with what's instability in other countries versus what's just commercial risk. Real banks do commercial risk in loans, and they can kind of figure that out. I understand why the federal government gets involved. There's international political risk involved in that loan. But right now the EXIM Bank is doing both of those, both commercial risk and overseas political instability risk. That's a real problem. There are a lot of these things that are hanging out there as real reforms as well as multiple others. We've got to be able to reform this bank if it's going to continue. The problem is the proposals are to press on and keep it as is or to do more reporting and transparency. I don't think the federal taxpayer needs more transparency. They need real reform in this bank. That's why I've not been able to support any of their proposals, because the bank is not being reformed and not being fixed, and the taxpayers aren't being protected in the process. This is an ongoing conversation, but I can't support any of the current proposals on that, and I want to be able to explain the whys and the whats and to give people the other side of the story as we deal with EXIM.